I would just say broadly, just to reach out. Nobody should be doing this alone. What the data suggests is that people wait for a very long time, sometimes for a crisis, before they reach out, and that's just the worst time for us or anyone to be helpful. Reach out early, even if you don't think you need any help or nothing can be done at this point, just to become informed. So truly, the earlier the better.
Welcome to Fading Memories, a supportive podcast for those of us caring for a loved one with memory loss. Good afternoon, care heroes. With me today is Alex Morris. She is with the Alzheimer's Association, Northern California, Northern Nevada Division. That is my chapter. And she is the professional training services person. I think I got that right. Did I get that right, Alex?
Professional training specialist.
Specialist. Okay. I was like, I got halfway through and I went, whoops. So she's going to talk to us today about the Savvy Caregiver training that the association puts on. I recently participated in their accelerated version. This is normally a 12-hour class. I got 6 hours, and Alex I've been told, is talented enough to give you highlights in about 45 minutes. So thanks for joining me today, Alex.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy to talk about Savvy. I've been involved in Savvy since the beginning. So our chapter adopted Savvy in 2008. I believe the Alzheimer's Association adopted it a few years before in 2005. It is now considered part of our core curriculum, and many chapters offer Savvy, which I think is incredible. It is an evidence-based program, which means we know it works. It comes in a 6-week and 3-week format. Sounds like you went through the 3-week accelerated course. I, of course, prefer the 6 weeks. We get more time together. We get to do more interactive things with participants. There's deeper learning, and the learning seems to stick, which is what we always want. However, I understand some of the challenges with stressed out, already overburdened caregivers finding 6 straight weeks in a row to commit to driving to and participating in a 2-hour class and then driving back. The 6-week course can be hard to fill, unfortunately, because of those challenges, which is why we, with the original developers, Ken Hepburn and his colleagues, the Alzheimer's Association created Savvy Express, which we call evidence-informed rather than evidence-based. Still are some of our highest rated education that we offer here at the chapter. We always get incredible feedback, and I can say that humbly because I didn't develop the curriculum. I didn't write the manual. A manual comes with it, by the way, and that is well received. You read the manual, right?
Yes, I did.
What did you think?
It was very good. As the listeners know, my mom is definitely in the latter stages of Alzheimer's, but I personally got stuff out of it, and I'm trying to remember, there was at least 10, if not a dozen people in my class. And there was one gal that made it the first and third time. And so most of us made all 3 classes. There was a couple people that didn't. So that's why I'm having a difficult time remembering how many people were in it. And everybody loved it. And one gal actually did take the 6-week class. And then basically, I think that was when her loved one was first diagnosed or earlier on in the disease. And then this 3-week class was kind of a refresher. And she said the 6 weeks was definitely better, but the 3 weeks was really good. So, and there was one gal that was literally coming on her lunch break. And she said there's no way she could have done the 6 weeks. And she got a lot out of the 3. So nobody's felt cheated that it was shorter.
Oh, good. That's really good feedback. I'm super happy to hear that. So Savvy was designed for hands-on caregivers. As you know, we go through a screening process. It's not appropriate for professionals or paraprofessionals. And fortunately, we have lots of education. We have conferences. A big part of my job is to train professionals. So there's plenty available for professionals. There's plenty available for long distance caregivers. Savvy is really tailored for folks who are week after week providing hands-on care, interaction with the person with dementia, because there's homework, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
So every week, the expectation is we teach, we do role plays, we watch videos, we do interactive exercises. There's opportunities to practice in the classroom setting, and then folks are expected to go home and do the homework. So part of the homework is reading the manual, which I agree with you. I think it's really well written and approachable. And I hear that a lot from family caregivers, how helpful it is. It's helpful just to have something written in black and white that validates your experiences. So folks go home, they read the manual, and they do the exercises that we ask of them, at least when they have time. And I understand, again, life interferes. Caregivers are very busy people. Sometimes they can't do the homework or all the homework, and that's okay. As you know, as adult learners, the more you put into something, the more you get out of it. And this is certainly what we hear from Savvy. The first part of the subsequent classes, so beyond the first class, we review the homework. We talk about what they learned or about what was validated in the manual, and we talk about the exercises. And we spend a fair amount of time in the beginning of the subsequent classes reviewing the homework. So, for example, maybe we taught you some techniques on organizing. We call it structure and support. Organizing an activity to be more successful for your person living with dementia, taking into account their interests, their skill set, where they are in this disease, understanding that that's variable based on person to person, situation to situation, and even from morning till evening. We understand that completely. So looking at the person, looking at how we introduce it, the words that we use, and how do we structure it? Is everything that we need in the same room? Can we go from room to room? Can we do this or that? I'll give you a concrete example. One of the interactive things we do in the group is we pretend that you're a volunteer at an adult daycare setting. And we give you a fictional person. And for example, this person, one of them is Mrs. L, and she's a former librarian, avid traveler, prize-winning gardener, and she's early stage. You know, what kinds of things could you do with her? And a lot of the time, people say gardening projects. That comes up a lot. And I asked them, so she's early stage and she knows a lot about this. Could you take her to the nursery? Absolutely. You could take her to the nursery. She could explain the kinds of plants and why she's picking out certain plants. So that's what we mean by skill set. And is it how big that project and how complicated that project might be based on where the person is in the disease? So that's just one example of homework, is maybe to do an art project or a building project or just household tasks with your person to kind of see with the new skills that you're learning how that might go. So can I ask you, did you participate in that piece of Savvy? Did you do something with your mom?
No, we didn't. We watched a video that basically tracked different people at different stages being asked to do certain tasks, like make a sandwich, which I think is an excellent example of the challenges of memory loss. As you know, sometimes improper nutrition is actually one of the, early signs of something's going on, because making a sandwich is a lot of steps. And so they demonstrated how this gal had to keep walking this woman through, can you make me a ham and cheese sandwich? And in the early stages, it wasn't a problem. And she was able to have a conversation with the physical therapist that was conducting the, I don't want to say experiment. That sounds kind of
assessment.
There you go. That's a much better word. And, that's what we did. Let me think. Because my mom is really in the later stages, what my mom and I do is we go people watching, only she likes to watch young people. I try not to say we go out and watch kids because that sounds very terrible. But that's what we do. We go to the pool and the park, and we go find children to go watch and do stuff with, because her visual processing is shot and her memory is, I'm not even sure it's a minute at this point. Like yesterday I was I told her, I said, oh, you were going to change shirts before we go to the pool because it's really hot outside and that shirt's probably going to be a little too warm. Oh yeah, that's probably a good idea. And then immediately does not know what we're doing. And I actually had to physically grab the front of her shirt and said, take this off. And she's like, oh, okay. And then she goes, yes, mother, which is annoying. But she was trying to put the short sleeve t-shirt on over the other shirt. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of new. And I know from taking the class and from dealing with her that if I give her instructions, not going to be very successful, even though it's really frustrating because she resents it, which I understand. And I don't know if I've told you, she doesn't remember who I am. She's comfortable with me. She knows she's safe with me, and she knows that we go do fun things. So she's all good with that. But when we were at the pool yesterday watching kids, she's like, oh, I wish my children were here. And it's like, oh, Lord. It's like, ouch.
Yeah, that happens. That happens.
Yeah. And when I remind her, I'm like, but I'm your oldest kid. Don't I count? And she just looks at me like confused and baffled. And then she gets irritated because she's confused and baffled. So I've given up trying to actually physically do things other than we will walk in the park if it's still, because I go early afternoon. So if it's still school year, it's much more difficult to find children to go watch, which, like I said, that really sounds creepy. But now in the summer, we can go almost anywhere and kids are out doing fun things like swimming or running around in the park. But in the school year, we go walk at the regional park and we look at the clouds and the trees. That's the extent of her abilities at this point.
So Savvy is, as you're saying, is actually, if you can, more helpful if you can enroll and take Savvy in the earlier and moderate stages, because you're right. It's harder to do various things with your person in late stage, even though it sounds like you're being quite successful at it. An example I want to give from one of my most recent Savvies is there was a gentleman, and he described his wife as early, and she was pretty early, not as early as he originally thought, which is something we also talk about a lot, is the stages of where your person is. But he said, we were reviewing the homework, and I said, so what did you decide to do? He goes, oddly enough, I decided that I needed to address the dinner issue. I said, okay, what do you mean? He said, well, my wife stopped eating dinner. And I realized from the Savvy classes that how I was approaching it was too big and complex for her. So he said, what I did is I would say, and this is what we've kind of always done, at least for the most recent past, is I'll say, honey, what do you want for dinner? And what she would say is, oh, nothing, I'm not very hungry. And then later on in the evening, she'd be rummaging for sweets. So he said, her pattern had completely changed. It wasn't good to eat sweets later in the evening, all of these things, right? So he said, after listening and reading, I realized that the concept of dinner was too big for her. So what I say now is, what I've been doing this week, what I say now is, hey, I'm going to make chicken and some asparagus for dinner. How does that sound? And she said, yeah, okay. And then she sits at the table. He just announces, okay, dinner's ready. And they sit together and they eat the meal. So now she's eating at a more appropriate time, the healthier choices, and not rummaging around for ice cream or cookies later. And he realizes it was all about just that one statement, honey, what do you want for dinner? And often it really boils down to something so essential. It's all about approach. You said your mom doesn't like being told what to do. And by the way, who does?
True.
Yeah. So a lot of what we talk about in Savvy and a lot of what we teach just broadly in our support groups and other education and care consultations is how can we make things happen without appearing to be bossy? How can we make things happen without creating a dynamic where the person might feel foolish or a little embarrassed because they didn't realize that you didn't mean for them to take off you didn't mean for them to put the shirt on top of the shirt. Yeah. You wanted her to change the shirt, right? And so perhaps, I wasn't there, but perhaps an alternative might be, well, why don't we put this on? Let's take this off first. So, again, we try different techniques. We see how it goes. We do our best not to appear instructive, but rather more conversational, like he was. Hey, I'm going to make some chicken and asparagus for dinner. Is that okay? So sometimes our folks prefer to have choices. So would you like this or this? We're really detectives, and we're really just being ultra sensitive to how they're responding to a particular request or situation.
I do have an example that probably came from what I learned in the Savvy course. For whatever reason, and about 2 months ago, mom dipped again in her cognitive awareness, which, is to be expected. And she has now resumed being resistant to showers. And the caregiver who is in charge of that is pulling her hair out. Last week, we went to the pool. We got in the water, waded around, sat on the edge. And knowing that she hadn't showered on Sunday, which is one of her 2 days, when we got back to the residence, I said, oh, hey, you said you wanted to take a shower and wash off the chlorine and the dirt and the sweat and all that. It wasn't all of that in one sentence because I had to repeat the sentence multiple times. And it took a few times of, oh, weren't you going to get in the shower and wash off the chlorine? Multiple times of that. I did get her in the shower. And it was interesting because the caregiver said, if she hands mom a soaped up washcloth, mom doesn't know what to do with it. I did that and she was fine. I think she washed some parts multiple times and maybe other parts not so much, but she washed the important stuff multiple times. I thought that was good. So I didn't interfere with that. And then I said something, I don't remember exactly how I approached it, but I asked her if she wanted me to wash her hair. I said, won't that feel nice if, I wash it for you? And I actually managed to wash her hair too. And I was surprised because she's extremely resistant with me. I don't really know why, because I never tell her what to do. I learned that from the support group that you guys facilitate for us. And it was successful. And I was really excited because as I was leaving, I got her all dressed and sat her in the dining room because it was their dinner time. And as I was leaving, the director of the memory residence was talking to one of the med techs. And I said, oh, hey. And she goes, oh, is there a problem? And I said, no, actually, there's not. Tell Kumba I got mom in the shower and washed her hair and all that good stuff. So, I had that little stroke of genius and the phraseology came to me and it worked. Now it might not work again. I didn't try it. Well, yesterday we didn't get in the water, so I didn't feel it was necessary, but I don't know that the phraseology would have popped into my head as easily if I hadn't done the Savvy class.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. And since her memory, like you said, late stage, so likely her short-term memory is quite impaired. You might be able to use the pool thing every time you want her to bathe, whether or not she went in the pool. She may not remember.
That's true.
So I want to be sure I cover some of the highlights of the Savvy class. So there's opportunities to practice new skills in communication, which is what it happens just like we've been doing it, very organically. You'll relay, or the participant will relay a story, and then the facilitator will say, well, maybe next time if you try it this way or that way, and other participants will kind of chime in too. It becomes very supportive over time. And certainly behavior modification techniques. There's a decision-making tool in Savvy. There's a model to assess caregiver stress and burden and techniques on how to manage that. And there's also tools to include other family who are not involved or could be more involved. I will say Savvy is one of our most diverse programs. We have been fortunate. We have a deep bench here in Northern California, Northern Nevada, and we have colleagues who have successfully translated Savvy to be more culturally and language appropriate for African American, Chinese, and Hispanic families. And as I said earlier, Savvy is composed of adult children, such as yourself, spouses, and the occasional very close family friend. No professionals. It's really not appropriate. Oh, and I want to just read something, an email that I just got a week ago from a recent class. So this is when we there's an exercise, a fairy godmother exercise, where the facilitator says, I'm your fairy godmother. Here's a piece of paper. I'm going to ask you to open in a moment. How much time did I give you? And the time ranges from 15 minutes to, I think, a week. So like an hour or 3 hours a day, etc. And the idea is to have people thinking about what I can do for myself to meet my needs, because you are just as important as the person you're caring for. You're responsible for another human being in many ways. So let's think about, if you have 15 minutes, if 15 minutes shows up, what might you do to take care of yourself rather than do that extra chore? So this lady, she did the exercise, and this is what she wrote. I just want you to know that the self-care exercise we did had a huge impact. I love my imagined escape so much that I'm making it happen, which wasn't easy. Next Wednesday, I leave for 5 days to the beach, and I already have a massage appointment there too. This getaway just might save my life. Thank you for the inspiration. And this is just isolated. All the trainers get comments like this on a regular basis. I think Savvy is a terrific curriculum. It offers, many opportunities for people to interact. People often exchange phone numbers and emails and stay in touch after Savvy. They often, if they haven't already, join a support group. We're getting more involved with the Alzheimer's movement, which I think is very positive. None of us are in this alone. None of us, actually, whether you're a caregiver or not. We're all dealing with this on some level or another. So I just wanted to make sure that I covered some of the really, positive attributes of Savvy. The three mantras that we talk about is take control, just don't do something, stand there, and so what? And you alluded to these when you were sharing some of your examples. The take control is, we encourage folks to take a clinical step back, and that's not easy because it's your parent or your spouse or someone very dear to you. But to take a clinical step back and think about what's really happening here and how can I change, or what could change about the situation or the environment to really help my person, instead of me just pushing and hoping for a different result. So taking control. Just don't do something, stand there, is about that clinical step back and just looking at the situation. What could I be doing differently? And the so what means sometimes, and I'll pick on myself. Before I had children, I was a very orderly, organized individual. Everything had a place and everything was in that place. And I had lists of things to do and was very proud of myself when those things got done, et cetera, et cetera. Then I started having children, and I fought against that for a while, and I was unhappy, and my husband was unhappy, my kids were unhappy, when finally I just accepted it doesn't matter whether I get all 5 of these things done today. It doesn't matter if tonight they have cereal and fruit for dinner. It ultimately, some of these things that I held so dear and thought were so important really didn't matter. And if we can just focus on the most important things and take everything else a little less seriously, our blood pressure goes down, our irritability goes down, and life just seems to go so much better.
The fairy godmother exercise, we did do that. That was homework. And even though my mom is in a memory residence, it was beneficial to me. I visit her on Mondays, and Mondays are full. I go to the gym, I come home, I shower, dress, I go to our Rotary meeting, which is an hour and a half, and then I go see my mom for a couple of hours. Last week with the shower success, it was closer to 3. And when I got home, I was physically drained, mentally drained. Even though it had been a very good day, it was just draining. And I know that there are things I have to do to kind of alleviate that feeling so that when I wake up Tuesday, I'm ready to do my stuff and take care of my life and my businesses and all that good stuff. Because there have been times that I have dealt with her on Mondays and woken up on Tuesdays, and I still feel like the truck ran over me and left me in the street. And that gets hard when you have things to do. You can't just, lay around on the couch and read books or whatever just because you don't feel like doing anything mentally and physically. So that was a really good exercise because it helped remind me of what I need, what I can do. We had 5 minutes, 15 minutes, half hour, a day, a week, I think was the time increments. And then let's see, what else did we do? Did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay, good. It got really quiet and I'm like, uh-oh.
I'm being a good listener.
Thank you. And one of the other, let's see, I think half of the Savvy class are also very regulars in the support group. So we did our last Savvy class, and then I think it was the following week that our support group met. And so we just sort of felt like old alumni all in the trenches together. And I think knowing each other quite well helped. And I know one gal she was the gal that was taking the class on her lunch break. She said, this is all about how we're thinking and how we respond. It was basically training us, not trying to fix our person.
That's absolutely correct, because as you know all too well, we can't. They have a brain disease. The changes that are happening are not their fault. We're never going to be able to fix them, so to speak. I had a family member, one of my support groups. I led a support group for 20 years. And she was, she just looked worn out and tired. And she seemed to be really beating herself up. And I kind of dug around a little bit, and finally it came out. I said, what is it that's dragging you down? And she said, I just feel like I'm failing my mom because she's not getting any better.
Oh, dear.
I know. And I said, oh my gosh, we need to rephrase that. It's not about our person getting better. Unfortunately, not yet, not until we have a treatment. It's about quality of life and being together and getting through this as best as we can, just one day at a time, and appreciating what is lovely around us and laughing together. It sounds like you do a lot of that with your mom. We focus very much on the present. Let's do that. We're supposed to do that anyway, right? Mm-hmm. Let's focus on being present. I tell a story. There's a gal, I used to run an adult daycare center, and I used to drive the van on Mondays. And one Monday I was driving a small van. I was driving the van. I picked up this beautiful gal. Her name was Anne. She's in the back seat. And I'm driving, thinking about my route and pedestrians and flows of traffic and trying not to hit people and, all of that, right? What am I going to do when I get into the office? All that busy brain stuff. And she says from the back seat, hey, Alex, this was in the fall. Hey, Alex, did you see that tree with all those colors? The leaves, they were red and orange and yellow and green, and how the sun was flickering through the leaves. It's beautiful. And I thought, who is the person in this car with the brain problem? Because it's not her right now.
Yes.
She's totally engaged in her environment and so loving this beauty all around her. And I didn't stop. I said, yeah, I did look. I said, yes, we were pretty bad. I was driving. But I thought, I would like to think now that I'm evolved enough where I could pull aside the car and sit and enjoy that with whomever, my person, whoever I'm with. I'd like to think I'm that evolved as she was in that moment. And I tell families, yeah, we talk about loss and yeah, we talk about different stages and decline, and it's all so hard. And if we can shift our frame of reference just for some of the time to the joy that they can still experience and still give, then they're so much better off, and so are we.
Taking my mom out was sort of a self-preservation because she's very physically capable. She doesn't need any walking aids. And, she, until, like I said, 2 months ago, I don't want to say conversational. She was better at it than she is now. But there was times when sitting in the courtyard of the residence, I'd end up like in conversation, so to speak, air quotes there, with 4 of them. And it was like too much. And in the winter, when it's hard to get out and go places because it's wet and it's cold and, the kids are in school, so it's kind of hard to go watch them enjoying life. It kind of just became the thing like, we need to get out of here because she needs a break. And I don't want to sit here and listen to her ask me the same question every 2 minutes. And I had an interesting experience on social media. I know people think Twitter is horrible. And I had put out there that I needed something different to do with my mom because of the stage that she's in. There's 2 regional parks close by, and we go to this one and we can drive up and look at the hills and the mountain and all the beautiful nature, which she loves. But we've done it enough times that I realized that she says the same thing in the same place every single time. And I was like, okay, I'm over that. And so I put out on Twitter, I got to come up with something different to do with mom. Hey, if you guys have ideas, let me know. And people that follow my account know that I like to mom likes to look at the trees and the sky and nature. And that's definitely good for us. Uh-oh, did I lose you?
Yes, you did for just a moment. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. I think it's okay because I was talking, so we'll just continue. So I was talking.
You were talking about your mom and trying to find things to do with her during the winter and going to a regional park and kind of looking out the window. Did I get the gist of it?
Yes. So I was on Twitter and I was looking for something different because she says the same thing at it's almost like mile marker number 1, mom will say, this is so amazing. Mile marker number 2, it's so big. It's like after a while, you're like, I'm going to drive this car off the cliff because I can't take this anymore. So I threw it out on Twitter. Hey, what do you guys like to do with your person? Because I'm looking for something different. And knowing that mom liked to look at nature, this person who was literally across the country said, hey, why don't you take your mom to this nursery that's here in my hometown, and just look at the plants. And I'm like, that's a really good idea. And I hadn't thought of it. Now, the nursery is east of my house and mom is west. So it would be like a lot of driving, which isn't always fun with her. But it's like, well, just because we can't practically go to that specific spot, now I can take her to, Lowe's and look at all of the garden stuff that's there now, although we haven't managed to do that yet. But it's, it's always an option, maybe in the fall when the kids are back in school. So I thought it was just really interesting that, people helped out with ideas, even though they were across the country. I mean, they literally sent a link to this place. I'm like, oh, I know where that is. I drive by there frequently.
As we said, we're all in this together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's through social media or support groups or whatever, getting ideas, there's lots of people out there with lots of nice ideas. Sometimes I have someone I work with and she likes nature. Most of us do. And so I went and I just bought some really inexpensive books of California or just, Yosemite and other national parks. And when we can't go outside, and I admit it doesn't have to happen. It doesn't happen that often here in California. We are very spoiled. It is nice to sit and look at the pictures. We also look at photographs. Oh my gosh, there's just so many ideas. I love the lows and looking at the flowers. I think that's great. I have a student that takes someone to local museums. So there's a lot of choices if we're open to them, to doing things with our person. I think it's great that you're willing to explore those things.
Yeah, I talked to a guest on art therapy for older adults, and she's like, well, just take her to a local art gallery and just look at what's on the walls. And I'm like, oh, hey, I've got a friend that has one here. Now, my hometown is tiny. So I know where your office isn't bigger than here, but we do have an art gallery. Unfortunately, it's not open on Mondays. We drove all the way over there and I'm like, oh, poop. That was a good idea. But because her visual processing is so bad, I'd have to have a big picture book because like if you try to show something to her on like a photograph on your phone, her brain does not translate that very well. And sometimes, like yesterday when we were at the pool, they had one deeper pool that had the floating, they called them lily pads. They're like big floating pieces of foam. And the idea was to hop across these lily pads to the other side of the pool without falling in. So that was pretty funny to watch. And I kept pointing out, they're really large, dark blue in the pale blue water. And she didn't seem to connect with them visually, which I thought was really interesting because we were standing right there. We get any closer, we'd been getting wet. So,
yeah.
That's one of the reasons I like to take her out in nature because that's so big that, even if you just go to a regular park, the trees are big, the sky is big, it's easy for her to see. And, and I've noticed a serious decline in its mental ability, but it affects her physically. And I don't know that we'll be going out for walks in the spring of next year. So I'm trying to do as much of those as I can because of that awareness. I hope that's not the case, but she gets really funny with shadows. It's sad, but it's funny. And yesterday she was walking around, where the deck had gotten wet. It was dark versus the light colored deck. So she's literally hopping around the dark water spots because she obviously thinks they're treacherous. They're a hole or it's funny. It's sad to watch.
Yeah, that's some of the visual spatial that we see as I heard on one of your prior podcasts. Before I forget, I do want to say that I get a lot of mileage, since we're talking about suggestions, I get a lot of mileage out of YouTube. Yes, it has to be a bigger screen, but you can even, hook that up to a television, right? So, cute kittens, ducks, and just cute little animal antics. I get lots of mileage out of that. I love bird feeders. Let's go look when someone's maybe having a hard day. Let's go look at the bird feeder. Maybe we need to add some more seed and, look at the sparrows and aren't they adorable? And then we talked just for a moment about art, but doing art is maybe not for your mama. I don't know, but it's an option. We have a art program here. It's called Memories in the Making. And I have a beautiful piece that I bought a few years ago from someone. I wish I could show it to you. Maybe I'll send you an email, but it's a beautiful, has lots of vibrant colors and it looks like a garden and it's full of life and energy. And she called it A Fruitful Life.
Oh, neat.
And this is painted by someone with moderate disease who had challenges and bad days. And all kinds of disappointments. And yet she painted this beautiful painting and she called it A Fruitful Life. And I also, before I forget Savvy, we know that we can't offer Savvy everywhere, that there's rural areas, and there is a tele-Savvy being launched. It's part of research right now. Ken Hepburn and his team are doing research to see if it is effective, again, evidence-based. So that's something that maybe your listeners could Google if they're interested in taking Savvy, but they live in more rural areas.
Well, that's kind of like me. We were rural many decades ago. And the Savvy Caregiver class, that was the first one they had out here. So I know I was talking to somebody, I think it was the gal, the substitute support group facilitator. She's from an hour and a half away, which I think is insane. So she was saying, oh, well, they're going to have the Savvy class again in X town. And everybody's like, oh, no, too far. It was almost like a collective nope.
Yeah, I respect that.
And she did too. And it's not that far, but like for me, I could probably manage it because mom is in a residence. But for people who are taking care of their person at home, there's no way. It was, it's probably close to an hour drive. So then you got the 2-hour class and then, that's half a day. That was a definite nope. So they were very happy, or the chapter was very happy that the class they had out here in my town was really, it had a great attendance and it was very well received. So I'm sure we'll get more, but I was going to ask you if they were going to make a webinar based version, and I'm sure that's doable. It is halfway through 2019 now. So.
Well, tele-Savvy, I believe, is just that. It's a webinar type, facilitators remote with people who are sitting in their homes kind of a thing. And the chapter have also tried with varying success, like an all-day Savvy. So the caregiver takes 6 hours, and I know it's a lot, but you get a lot of good information, but it's all at once, so you're not traveling back and forth 3 times. We're just trying to look at different ways to get people the information that we feel is really helpful. I
think they asked us what we thought of a 6-hour class, and most of us were like, yeah, no, 2 hours is enough, because after a while, it's just your brain doesn't absorb the information.
That's true. Yeah, there's a lot. I completely agree.
But, I would do a 6-hour versus not doing it, especially if I had learned about it when mom was in the earlier stages, although my dad was highly resistant to anything. Like I researched an adult day program for them because he had chronic illnesses and very little patience. And it didn't take very much with her to erode all of his patience. And he would snap at her and he would get very cross. And I'm like, they need time apart. She needs to be with people like her. He needs time to be able to do whatever he needs to do or wants to do. And so I found a place and talked to them, and I felt really good about it. So the next step was obviously to go and visit, and he just threw on the brakes. And I will never understand, other than ego, why he wouldn't even go look.
That's a whole other podcast. We talk about that too.
That's true. One of my earlier ones was on the adult day program that's here in my town, because they incorporate kids. There's a preschool and then an after school program. So in the morning, they'll bring the preschoolers over for, 30 to 45 minutes. And in the afternoon, they'll do the same thing with the older kids, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. And the benefit that the kids get and that the seniors get is easy to imagine. But what was astounding to me was the benefit that, maybe the sandwich generation person was getting. The mom of the little kids, the kids are getting some extra grandparent time. And if you're taking care of your person, like maybe your spouse, they're around kids, and that really seems to perk up my mom, which I attribute to her being a mom and a grandma. And I was just astounded. And the title of that podcast is It Takes a Village, because I thought that's what this is. It's a village. It's the little kids, the bigger kids, the seniors. but the people who aren't even there, the person holding that family together gets this tremendous amount of benefit too. And I was very impressed with that program.
I agree. Intergenerational programs, I think they're terrific, and we need more of them.
Yeah. There's another one out here run by a church, but I don't believe it's intergenerational, and it's been successful. So I know they're good programs. One gal, her dad doesn't want to leave, so now they've had to get really super creative on getting him out. Which is a good problem to have. But I don't know why my dad, other than it was all the way across town, and he would have been driving through quite a bit of school traffic. I mean, my parents' house is across the street from a school, and to get to where this program was, they would have passed a high school, an elementary school, and a middle school, and the junior college just to get there. So, morning traffic, not so fun. But I never did understand that, because I know it would have been really good for both of them. And, I wished he had found or looked for the Alzheimer's Association earlier on, because I think it would have helped everybody. Because I think he just, between his health issues and her memory issues, I think he finally just gave up.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate when we hear these cases about especially spousal. It's always hard, but especially in the spousal relationship, change is hard, and there are so many reasons why. And the primary caregiver, who's a spouse, for whatever reason, is hesitant or resists change. Essentially, is what it boils down to. And again, that's a whole nother topic.
That's true. I find it really fascinating, especially this month, June. My support group, I think there was about 10 of us. It was a little lighter than normal. We've had as many as 30 in our group at one time, which is really...
That's a big group.
Yeah. It's a it was, I think it was only once that it was that big, but there was a lot of us. I'm like, oh man, this is terrible that there's so many people that need to be here. But the group that was at the meeting this month was all women. And we know that Alzheimer's and dementia affects women more than men. So it just seems like men don't reach out as much, which is unfortunate, because I've learned so much. I joined the support group 2 months before I got the idea for the podcast. So I have that. I have all these great people that I talk to, and I definitely would not be as at ease with dealing with my mom if I hadn't found you guys and then decided to share everything I was learning with the world.
Well, I think it's great that you're doing this. As I said earlier, I listened to a couple of them. I enjoyed what I heard. I felt it was very accurate and important. So you keep up the good work. Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And I will definitely make sure that, there's links so people can find the Alzheimer's Association. I always put the 24/7 helpline phone number at the end so people can find that. Is there anything else you think somebody listening should know about before we go?
I would just say broadly, just to reach out. Nobody should be doing this alone. What the data suggests is that people wait for a very long time, sometimes for a crisis, before they reach out, and that's just the worst time for us or anyone to be helpful. Reach out early, even if you don't think you need any help or nothing can be done at this point, just to become informed. So the earlier the better.
Definitely, because I've learned so much, and I frequently think, man, I wish I'd known this sooner. So that's definitely great advice. Well, I thank you for giving people the highlights of Savvy, and hopefully the televersion, the webinar television. I forget what you called that. Telesavvy. There we go. Hopefully they get that launched soon, because like I said, and you said, knowledge is power, and it helps us. If we're not fighting against their brain disease all the time, we're more at peace, and that's important
for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to come over to the chapter one of these days and say hi to everybody.
That'd be great.
All righty. Well, you have a good afternoon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in. I want to remind you, if you need help right this minute, you have a question you need answered right now, you can contact the Alzheimer's Association 24/7 hotline. Their phone number is 1-800-272-3900. Thanks for tuning in to Fading Memories, and as always, I'll be in your ears again next Tuesday.